They always laughed when I mentioned it. Not cruelly. Not loudly. The kind of laughter that's worse. Polite, dismissive, final. Grandma didn't mean it literally, my uncle would say, waving a hand like he was brushing away dust. She said a lot of things near the end. Even my mother joined in sometimes, smiling the way people do when they think they're being kind. You don't need to hold on to that, she told me once. It'll only disappoint you. But Grandma had looked me straight in the eye when she said it. Not fragile. Not confused. Certain. I made sure you'll be taken care of, she whispered, squeezing my hand. No matter what they say. I was 22 then, sitting beside her hospital bed, watching the machines breathe for her. I nodded because that's what you do when someone you love says something heavy. But I remembered it. Every word. After she passed, the house filled with relatives who spoke in low voices and made quick decisions. Jewelry was divided. Furniture claimed. Papers gathered and sorted, by people who didn't invite me into the room. When I asked about Grandma's insurance, my uncle laughed softly. There was none, he said. We checked. When I mentioned her promise, my cousin smirked. She probably meant love, he said. That's what they always mean. That became the joke. My faith. Still waiting on Grandma's miracle? Any update on that imaginary policy? I stopped bringing it up. But I never stopped believing something existed. Because Grandma was meticulous. She labeled drawers. Kept receipts from the 1980s. Filed documents alphabetically. She didn't promise things casually. For 10 years, I carried that belief quietly. 10 years of hearing I was naive. Sentimental. Holding on to false hope. Yesterday, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something, instinct maybe, made me answer. Is this Daniel Mercer? The woman asked. Yes. This is Elaine Porter from Northfield Insurance. We've been conducting a policy audit, and we believe we've located a life insurance policy held by your grandmother. My heart stopped. I'm calling because, she continued, you're listed as the primary beneficiary. The room felt suddenly very still. For 10 years, they told me it was nothing. For 10 years, they laughed. And in that moment, I realized something that made my hands shake harder than shock ever could. They hadn't just doubted Grandma. They'd counted on me giving up. After Grandma's funeral, everything moved fast. Too fast for grief to catch up. My uncle took charge almost immediately. He said it was easier that way. Less confusion, fewer arguments. Everyone nodded. No one questioned him. I wasn't asked to help. I was told to rest. She wouldn't want you stressed, my mother said, steering me out of the living room while papers spread across the table behind her. They spoke in lowered voices. Closed doors softly. Made decisions like they were checking items off a list. When I finally asked about Grandma's insurance, it was weeks later, after the casseroles stopped coming and life began pretending nothing had changed. My uncle didn't even look up from his coffee. She didn't have a policy, he said. We already checked. Did you? I asked. He sighed like I was being difficult. Trust me, he said. If there was anything, we'd know. That became the official version. No policy. No payout. No mystery. Just memories and a modest estate divided neatly among those who showed up early. Whenever I mentioned Grandma's promise after that, the reactions were always the same. A smile. A head tilt. A soft correction. She was comforting you. She didn't want you worried. She wasn't thinking clearly. But Grandma had been thinking clearly right up until the end. She corrected nurses. Remembered birthdays. Balanced her checkbook from her hospital bed. The idea that she'd imagined something so specific never sat right with me. Still, I learned quickly how inconvenient belief could be. At family gatherings, the jokes started. Any word from the insurance fairy? My cousin once teased. Careful. Another laughed. You'll manifest it. They laughed. I smiled. And then I stopped talking about it. Not because I doubted her. Because I was tired of defending something no one else wanted to consider. Years passed. Life moved on. Jobs. Rent. Relationships that didn't last. Every now and then, I'd think about Grandma's promise, usually late at night, when doubts feel louder. Was I holding on to something that never existed? Or was everyone else too eager to close the book? I remembered something small then, something I hadn't thought about in years. The day after Grandma died, I'd gone back to her house alone. Most of the drawers were empty. But one closet had been cleaned too thoroughly. No dust. No hangers. Like someone had taken everything, and made sure it didn't look like anything was ever there. I'd mentioned it once. My uncle brushed it off. She didn't keep much. That was the moment I started doubting them instead of myself. Because Grandma kept everything. And people who are certain there's nothing to find don't rush to clear spaces. They wait. They assume no one will check. For 10 years, that assumption held. Until it didn't. The woman from the insurance company didn't sound excited. She sounded careful. Which told me this wasn't some clerical fluke or marketing call. This was something that had been sitting unresolved for a long time. I just want to be clear, I said, pacing my apartment. Everyone told me there was no policy. That happens more often than you'd think, Elaine replied. Especially with older policies. This one predates several system changes. Predates. That word mattered. She explained that the policy had been issued decades earlier. Paper-based. Manually filed. Never digitized properly when companies merged and rebranded. It surfaced during a legacy audit, she said. We're trying to locate beneficiaries before the state steps in. The state. Which meant this thing was real enough to matter. How did you find me? I asked. There was an old beneficiary card, she said. Your name was clear. Address wasn't. It took time. 10 years. 10 years of believing I was foolish. I need to verify a few things, she continued. But I wanted to notify you first. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at nothing. I didn't call my family. Not yet. Because I needed facts before feelings got involved. The next day, I met Elaine at the insurance office. She placed a thin folder on the table. Inside was a scanned copy of Grandma's signature. I knew it instantly. The slight tilt. The deliberate loops. This policy lists you as the sole beneficiary, Elaine said. No contingencies. Sole. Not shared. Not split. Not symbolic. This was updated 6 months before her death, she added. 6 months. When everyone claimed Grandma was confused. When they said she didn't mean what she said. My throat tightened. Why wasn't this found sooner? I asked. Elaine hesitated. There were address changes. And someone contacted us shortly after her passing. My heart thudded. Who? She checked her notes. Your uncle. The room went very quiet. He reported the policy as non-existent, she said. We had no active record at the time to contradict him. I nodded slowly. Of course he did. The jokes. The dismissal. The urgency to clear out her things. It all rearranged itself into something sharper. Something intentional. How much is the policy? I asked. Elaine folded her hands. With a crude value, she said, just under $400,000. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Not relief. Validation. For 10 years, they told me Grandma's promise was just comfort. A sweet lie. But she hadn't been comforting me. She'd been preparing me. I left the office with copies of everything. And as I stepped into the sunlight, one thought rose above all the others. They hadn't laughed because they were sure nothing existed. They laughed because they were sure I'd never prove it. And now, the past wasn't just knocking. It was standing right in front of me, holding paperwork. I didn't announce what I knew. I let it change me first. That's how you can tell when something real has entered your life. Not loudly, but by how differently you move through rooms afterward. At the next family gathering, I showed up empty-handed. No explanations. No defensive smile. Just calm. They noticed. My cousin tried first. "So," he said with a grin that leaned too hard into humor, "any updates from Grandma's imaginary safety net?" A few people chuckled. I didn't. I looked at him and said, "Actually, yes." The room stilled, not completely, but enough. My uncle laughed, louder than anyone. "You're still on that?" I nodded. The insurance company called. Silence landed this time. Not awkward. Alert. "What insurance company?" my aunt asked. I didn't answer right away. I took a sip of water. Let the moment breathe. "The one that found Grandma's policy during an audit," I said. "The one that lists me as beneficiary." My uncle's smile slipped. "Just a fraction." "That's impossible," he said quickly. "We checked everything." "I know," I replied. "They have a record of that." His face went tight. "Then they're mistaken." "No," I said evenly. "They're very certain." No one laughed now. My mother glanced between us, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I met with them yesterday," I said. "They showed me the paperwork. Grandma updated it 6 months before she passed." That's when my uncle stood. "I think this conversation is inappropriate," he said. "We're here to spend time together." "Then why did you spend 10 years joking about it?" I asked. The question wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. People shifted in their seats. My cousin suddenly found his phone fascinating. My aunt's brow furrowed, like she was replaying old moments. "You told me there was nothing," my mother said to my uncle quietly. "There was nothing," he snapped. At the time you checked?" I asked. "Or at the time you decided that did it?" "Are you accusing me of something?" he demanded. I shook my head. "No. I'm telling you what the insurance company told me." Facts are dangerous like that. They don't argue. They wait. My uncle stared at me, jaw clenched, then looked away. "Believe whatever you want," he said. "It won't change reality." I smiled, softly. "It already has," I said. I left early that night. Not because I was upset. Because the air had shifted, and everyone felt it. By the next morning, my phone was full. Texts. Missed calls. Sudden concern. "Let's talk. There must be confusion. We should clear this up as a family." Funny how belief becomes urgent once proof exists. I didn't respond right away. Because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't the one waiting. They were. They wanted a meeting. Not a fight. Not an argument. A meeting. That's what my uncle called it when he left the voicemail. His voice careful, measured, almost professional. "We should all sit down," he said. "Clear up some misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. I agreed. Not because I owed them anything. Because I wanted to see how far the story could bend before it finally broke. We met at my aunt's house, neutral ground. The living room was arranged too neatly, like a stage set for calm discussion. Everyone was there. My uncle. My mother. 2 cousins who suddenly felt the need to be involved. And me. No one offered me a seat. I took one anyway. My uncle started talking immediately. "There's been a lot of confusion," he said. "Old records. Companies lose things all the time." I nodded. "They don't lose beneficiary cards." He paused. "They told you that?" he asked. "They showed me," I replied. My mother turned toward him. "You said there was nothing." I said there was nothing we could find, he snapped. The room went quiet. That's not what you said, I replied calmly. You said there was no policy. He exhaled sharply. Because that's what I believed. I reached into my bag and placed the copies on the table. The policy. The signature. The update date. Grandma's handwriting stared up at all of us. 6 months before she died. When she was supposedly confused. My aunt leaned forward. Why didn't you tell us about this? She asked him. He didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't about paperwork anymore. It was about intent. She trusted me to handle things, he said finally. I didn't think this would ever surface. There it was. Not denial. Not innocence. Expectation. You didn't think I would ever surface, I said quietly. My cousin scoffed. So what, you think this was stolen? I think it was dismissed, I replied. And then mocked. For 10 years. My mother's voice cracked. You let us believe she made it up. My uncle looked at her. I was trying to keep peace. No, I said. You were trying to keep control. That word landed hard. The room shifted. Because suddenly, the jokes made sense. The laughter. The way they treated my belief like a personality flaw. If they laughed long enough, maybe I'd doubt myself. And I almost did. I never took anything, my uncle said defensively. I know, I replied. That's not what this is about. It was about silence. About deciding whose word mattered. I've already filed the beneficiary claim, I continued. The insurance company is processing it. You can't just, he started. I can, I said. Because Grandma made sure I could. No one spoke after that. There was nothing left to reinterpret. I stood. I'm not here for apologies, I said. I just wanted you to hear this from me instead of a lawyer. I picked up my bag. At the door, my uncle said quietly, You always were too trusting. I turned back once. No, I said. I was paying attention. And then I left. For the first time in 10 years, the promise wasn't something I defended. It was something that defended me. The insurance company didn't rush. That somehow felt right. Promises like Grandma's were never meant to arrive in a hurry. They were meant to arrive intact. Elaine called me 2 weeks after the meeting. Everything has been verified, she said. The claim is approved. Approved. No appeals. No complications. No objections that held weight. The policy had been clean. The beneficiary clear. The delay, irrelevant. When the funds were transferred, there was no dramatic moment. No confetti. No sudden urge to call anyone. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the confirmation email for a long time. Just under $400,000. Not a miracle. A follow-through. I thought about Grandma's hand in mine. The steadiness of it. The certainty in her eyes when everyone else had decided to forget. She hadn't promised money. She'd promised care. And care, I was learning, doesn't always look like comfort in the moment. Sometimes it looks like patience that outlives disbelief. My family went quiet after that. The jokes stopped entirely. So did the advice. So did the dismissive smiles. My uncle didn't call. Neither did my cousin. My mother called once. Just once. She really did that for you, she said, like she was still trying to place the pieces. Yes, I replied. She did. There was nothing else to say. I didn't spend the money right away. I let it sit, the way Grandma had let the promise sit. I paid off what needed paying. I fixed what had been fragile for too long. I gave myself room to breathe without guilt. And in doing that, something unexpected happened. The weight I'd been carrying for 10 years, of being doubted, mocked, quietly diminished, lifted. Not because I'd proven them wrong. Because I'd stopped needing to. Justice didn't come in the form of apologies or confessions. It came in the form of truth, finally being allowed to finish its sentence. And Grandma? She never needed anyone to believe her. She just needed one person to remember. For 10 years, they treated my faith like a flaw, like something childish I'd eventually outgrow. They said believing in Grandma's promise was my way of avoiding reality, that I was clinging to comfort instead of facts, that holding on to it made me naive. But the truth is, faith wasn't what cost me all those years. Silence did. Silence is expensive in ways no one warns you about. It teaches you to doubt your memory, to second-guess your instincts, to laugh along when something important to you becomes a joke. I paid that price quietly. Every time I stayed silent at a family table. Every time I swallowed the urge to say, she wouldn't lie to me. Every time I wondered if maybe they were right, and I'd imagined it all. But faith. Faith was the cheapest thing I ever carried. Because it didn't demand proof. It didn't argue. It just waited. Now, when I think of Grandma, I don't think about the policy first. I think about her patience. She knew exactly what would happen after she was gone. She knew who would take charge, who would dismiss, who would laugh. And she planned anyway. Not to create conflict, not to prove a point, but to make sure that one quiet person wouldn't be erased. I didn't confront my family again after the money came through. There was nothing left to explain. The truth had already done what truth does best. It rearranged the room without raising its voice. Some relationships cooled. Some never recovered. That used to bother me. It doesn't anymore. Because belief, real belief, isn't loud. It doesn't demand agreement. And it doesn't collapse just because other people refuse to see it. Grandma once told me, people will try to rewrite what they're uncomfortable with. She was right. But some things resist being rewritten. Some promises wait. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't the money at all. It's the moment you realize you were never foolish for believing. You were just early. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.